Um, Hi there, welcome everybody, and welcome on to today's desk break yoga. I am in my actual workplace today with some actual real live people joining in. So if it seems like I'm talking to people behind the camera, then that's why. Um, it would be lovely if anybody is there online, if you want to say anything in the chat or post any comments or likes or things like that. That would be lovely. But today we are going to be doing some yoga for when you've been sitting down too much. We are going to start sitting, so you can get yourself settled, but not for very long today before we come up to standing. So as ever, the things I'm going to show you are suggestions. If anything doesn't feel right in your body, then either back off, do something different, think about alternatives and things you could do, and just take it at your own pace. I also invite you, if you're comfortable to do it, to take off your shoes and just so that you can feel the ground underneath your feet. And then in terms of setup, you just need some kind of chair, something like a dining room chair, an office chair, anything like that. But if you need to, just adjust it so that you can get your feet flat on the floor. So with that, then let's begin. So I'll just invite you to start by just sitting on your chair, any old how today, and closing your eyes and just bringing your attention inwards. And I'm going to just invite you to bring your attention away from whatever it is you've been doing. You probably had a busy morning, whether that was sitting on the computer, rushing around, doing things in the house. And just take this moment to just settle in and start to notice how your body's feeling. And I'm just going to invite you to notice how you're sitting. And this isn't, try and not judge yourself and say, oh, I've got such bad posture, I'm all sitting like this, sitting like that. Let's take the judgment out of it and just make it purely about observation. So just noticing, oh, this feels a bit funny, that's interesting, or oh, my shoulders are rounding, that's interesting. And just take it as information rather than any kind of judgment. And then once you've done a quick scan of your body to see where it is, I want you to just take a moment to think about sitting up nice and tall, whatever that means for you. So maybe engaging through the abdominal muscles a little bit just to help support your core. Maybe rolling your shoulders back and down, bringing them away from your ears. Making sure there's lots of space around your neck. Lifting up through the crown of your head. And now just taking a moment to notice how this feels different to the way that you were sitting when you first came in. And the reason for that is that today's session is all about for when you've been sitting too much. And all of us, whether it's a long car journey or sitting long hours at work, plane journey, anything like that, train, our bodies can sometimes get very grumpy with us if we spend too much time sitting. So today's session is just going to give you some tools to help address that. Okay, so now that we know what it feels like to sit up nice and tall, as you might imagine, we're not going to spend that much of the session sitting down today. So I'm going to invite you to come up to standing. And we're just going to start standing in what in yoga is called mountain pose. So it's standing up nice and tall. So again, thinking about some of the things we were doing there when we were sitting. So engaging the abdominal muscles to help support your back, and think about lengthening up through the legs, checking in with the pelvis if it's at a funny angle or anything like that. rolling the shoulders back and down, lengthening up through the crown. And again, just noticing this feeling of standing nice and tall. Taking a couple of deep breaths there. Okay. And then from there, we're just going to start a little bit of movement. So I'm going to invite you to take your feet maybe a little bit wider apart and bend your knees a little bit, and then just let your arms swing round from one side to the other. And try and relax your arms as you do it if you can, so they're almost like bits of wet spaghetti and just flopping around your body. And this is one of the best things for if you've been sitting for a long time, just starting to get everything moving. I do this quite a lot. Now, keeping your knees bent so you're not jarring them. You can even lift up your heel as you turn round, if that helps. So we don't want to put any pressure on the knee. And you can adjust the height of where the arms are, see if that feels better for you, whether they're coming up around the shoulders, around the waist, around the hips. You can just play around with that and find what works for you. Okay, so we'll just slow that down a little bit and come back to center. So from here, we'll just take a nice big stretch up overhead, really lengthening up through the fingertips. And then I'm going to invite you to take one hand, doesn't really matter which one, over to the opposite wrist, and then think about stretching that arm up and then over. Only go as far as you feel you can stay in control with this movement. And then back up to center, then over to the opposite side. And again, coming up. Up is more important than over. We're just trying to get that really nice long stretch all the way down the side of the body. And then reaching up. And then we'll just take the arms down, maybe give them a little bit of a shake. So from here, we'll come to use your chair. And I'm using the top edge of the chair. You could use a table or anything like that as well. And we're just going to come back into a downward facing dog using the chair. So putting your hands on and then just walking your feet back until you feel you're getting a nice stretch. And think about your hips kind of pulling back. So your hips are the part of your body that's furthest back here. Your ears are just between your biceps. And you can take some little movement here. If a little bit of kind of wiggling side to side would feel good, you can go ahead and do that. But what we're really trying to do here is get a great stretch out through the back. And that is one of the places that can get really kind of compressed when you're sitting for too long. So that's one of our main aims today, is to really stretch out through the back. And then we'll take one more nice deep breath here. And then on an exhale, we'll just slowly walk it back up and come back up to center. Then I'm going to turn my chair round. For you, you might just turn yourself round, but it's just so you can see me. And then we'll come to use the seat of the chair this time. And bringing the hands down, so almost as if you were on hands and knees, but you're using the seat of the chair instead of being on the floor. And then from here, I'm going to invite you to take some cat and cow stretches. So that's the one where you lift the head and let the back kind of, might not curve that much when you're standing up, but just that idea of curving it. And then flipping it to bring the head down, tuck the chin in, and round up through the spine. So just alternating between those two movements. Can be quite nice to coordinate this one with the breath. So inhaling as you bring the head up, and then exhaling as you bring the head down. But really try to think of this as a ripple all the way up through the spine, every little vertebra is moving here. We're kind of oiling the joints, just getting everything moving, as I say, trying to decompress the spine a bit. And then we'll do one more round of that. And then the next time your head comes up, we'll finish there. And then just coming to that neutral position. From here, we're going to take a little twist, just staying in this same position. So I'm going to do it on my right-hand side first, because that's the side that's facing the camera and the people who are in the room with me. So I'm going to bring my left hand to the middle of the chair. So it's now kind of underneath my face. And then I'm going to bring my right hand onto my right hip. And then I'm going to think about moving from the shoulder, lifting that shoulder up and turning your torso round, turning your chest round to the right hand side. And you're probably feeling this in the upper back, maybe in the lower back, the hips a little bit. Try and keep equal weight between both of your feet. So we're keeping nice and planted in the lower body and twisting through the upper body here. Remembering to breathe. And then we'll unravel back to center. Swap hands. So bring your right hand in front, your left hand onto your hip. And then this time leading with the left shoulder, opening up and turning your face to the left-hand side. And just enjoying that stretch through the spine, keeping your feet well planted, that right hand well planted to give you that leverage to twist against. But only going as far as feels good. This should feel really kind of satisfying. If it's painful, then back off a bit. And then we'll just unravel back to center, and then just gently coming back up to standing. So we're gonna now start to get, so we've kind of warmed up the back a little bit, got some movement going there. We're gonna move now to the hips and the lower back, because they can become, as I say, quite tense and kind of compressed if you're sitting down a lot. So it doesn't matter which side you are, but I think I'd encourage you to have your chair handy or something, a wall or something like that for support. And we're going to take all the weight. For me, it's the left leg, so that's the one nearest the chair. Take your weight across to the foot that's nearest to the chair. And then draw some circles just with your knee. Now, those circles can be as big or as small as you want. So it could just be really just low, just moving the hip there, or you can make these really big circles depending on how your body's feeling today and your hips and your body. And we're just really kind of working into that hip socket, getting a bit of movement there. And again, when we're sitting down, we're just sort of in one position all the time. So by moving the kind of hips out and round, we're just increasing that range of motion. And then just reverse that, whichever way you've been doing your circles, and take it round in the opposite direction. Take a few rounds there before we swap to the other side. You might be starting to feel your standing leg working here, because that's doing quite a lot of work to hold your weight. And then we'll pop that down. Maybe have a little bit of a shake out. And then we'll swap to the other side. I'm going to move my chair over so you can see, but you might just turn round or whatever you need to do. Okay, so we'll bring your weight over this time onto the other side. For me, it's the right leg, but if you did the other way, that's fine. And then just lifting up, circling there. If you do want to test out your balance, you could try taking your hand away, but with all this movement, it can be quite challenging. I'm noticing that on the camera, because of the black at the bottom of the screen, you can't really see my legs, but I hope you get the idea of what I'm doing. Circling round there and really getting into that joint. Mine's clicking a bit. If yours is doing that, it doesn't necessarily mean there's anything bad going on. It's just a sign that it's often just the tendons kind of moving across the bone. And then we'll reverse that again, whichever way you went, and we'll bring those circles back in the opposite direction. Okay, and then we'll pop that foot down. Okay, I'm now going to suggest one that we haven't done. I was trying to think of something that would really get into the shoulders. And this is one I don't think we've done despite having done this for a year. I don't think we've done this before. So it's going to combine a little bit of a lunge and a nice big shoulder opener. So I'm gonna take my right foot forward a little bit and my left foot back, and bending that front knee a little bit. Just really, we're just getting a nice stable base here. You can use your chair for support if you want to see how you get on. And then we're going to take the arm, so the left arm, in some nice big circles, just getting around. You can think air guitar here if you want to get a bit of rock action on. But really what we want to do is just get some nice big circles in that shoulder. When we're sitting down for too long, there's a tendency to round the shoulders and kind of hunch forwards. So we're really trying to counteract that here. And then we'll flip that, bring it in the other direction. Also as well, it doesn't matter if your circles aren't as big as this or if they don't look quite the same. It's really finding a nice opener for that shoulder that feels good. Okay, if you shake out that arm a little bit, and then we'll swap to the other side. So for me, I'm turning around and I'm bringing my left foot forward, my right foot back a bit. So again, we're just getting a bit of a kind of stable base here, bending that front knee a little bit just for stability. And then this time it's my right arm that's going all the way up and round, channeling whichever 80s hair metal band is your music of choice. Okay, some great circles in there into the shoulder. And then flipping it and bringing it back the other way. And then we'll just shake that out. Come back to center. So where are we up to? Okay, now that we've warmed up the shoulders a little bit, as I said, one of the things that there's a tendency to do when you're sitting a lot is really kind of round the shoulders forward. So this, I'm going to suggest a really big shoulder opener. But I'll give some options, so just see how you get on. It can be a little bit challenging. So I'm actually going to turn around just so you can kind of see what I'm doing. But what we're thinking about doing here is rolling the shoulders maybe up towards your ears and then round behind you. And then see if you can clasp your arms together, first of all. Just see how that feels. Now, engaging the abdominal muscles slightly. We don't want to make this too much of a back bend, so we don't want to be sort of doing this movement. We want to keep it quite nice and upright. And then from there, you might see if you can bring your hands together. This is one that is one of those kind of pretzel-y ones. Bring your hands together in a kind of prayer position, but behind your back. Now, if you can't do that, that's absolutely fine. Just stay with clasping the wrists or the elbows behind your back. But if you can, then that's quite a nice stretch for the arms and the shoulders as well. But if you're doing that, as I say, really make sure you're thinking about taking those shoulders back and round. That's the important thing. And engaging the abdominal muscles a bit to keep you nice and upright rather than kind of leaning backwards. And then that can be quite intense, so we'll let that go. Give your hands a bit of a shake out. And then we're just going to do a couple more standing things. So again, thinking about this opening out, I'm going to suggest a standing back bend. But standing back bends, it can be quite easy to overdo them. So this is where we're going to start, first of all, by really engaging those core muscles, engaging those abdominal muscles to help you stay supported Also in this one, engaging your glutes a little bit, so squeezing your butt cheeks a little bit as well, just helps to keep everything supported. Then bring your shoulders, yeah, you bring your hands kind of round somewhere onto kind of the small of your back. And then again, a bit like we were doing before, think about rolling your shoulders back and open. And then once you get to about here, then maybe with everything engaged, your core and your glutes, maybe starting to lean back a little way. Maybe taking the head to look sort of up towards the ceiling, but just back off. If it feels out of control, if you feel like you're going too far, then just back up a little bit. And then we'll not stay too long. Come back up. And then to counterpose that, I'm just going to invite you to come into just a standing forward fold. So bend your knees really generously and just fold forwards. Clasp your elbows again here because that sort of takes the focus off. You know, it's not about trying to touch your toes. It's about stretching out the back and counterposing that back bend that we just did. So really just hanging forwards here, letting the head go. So tucking the chin into the chest so that the crown of your head comes down towards the floor. Closing your eyes if you want to, but keeping the knees nice and bent just to make it about the back rather than the hamstrings, this one. And then tucking your chin in, engaging your abdominal muscles, and slowly, slowly rolling back up to standing. Imagining just stacking one vertebra at a time up on top of the other. Up to standing, and then just take a little moment there. Woo! And notice how you're feeling. So from there, now that we've gotten all stretched out, we are going to come back down to sitting again. It's going to happen inevitably. We're just going to take a couple of seated postures, which are particularly good for the lower back and the hips. So come to sit down. Sitting up nice and tall in your chair and coming to the edge of the chair so that you're not leaning on the back support. And then from there, the first one I'm going to suggest is, if it's okay for you, is to bring one foot up onto the opposite knee. So again, I'm not sure how well you can see that on the camera because of the black behind me. But one foot up onto the opposite knee. So I've got my right hand here on my knee, my left hand on my ankle. And if your knee is up here, then that's fine. We're just thinking about kind of gradually encouraging it down. That's okay. If this shape really isn't good for you, you can always just cross at the ankle as well. What we want to do really is just open out through this hip again. But if you're here and that's feeling like a nice stretch, that's okay. You can stay there. If you want a little bit of a deeper stretch, you can think about leading with the chest, and we're almost kind of trying to look up and over the knees, leaning forwards a little bit. So imagining there's maybe a pond or something on the floor and you're trying to see your reflection in it. So keeping the length in the neck, length in the back, and only coming as far forward as feels like a good stretch in your hip. Some people will find this very intense and might just be much happier just staying upright, and that's fine as well. And then we'll gently come back up, right, and then just lift that foot down. And then we'll take the other one across. So whichever one you did, we'll swap to the other side, bring the knee up, and then sitting up nice and tall first of all, just checking in, see how that feels there. Not judging yourself for where your knee is, feeling it should be any different. It just is what it is. And then if you want more, again, thinking about leading with the crown of the head, looking forward as if there was something on the floor in front of you rather than collapsing down, and just leaning as far forwards as feels like a good stretch for your back and your hip. And when you find that spot where you think, oh, that's it, then just staying there, breathing, just getting that right into that hip. Can feel like a very satisfying one, this, but it can be very intense. Then gently coming back up, lifting up, popping that foot down. And then I'm just turning to the side so you can see me, but you can keep your chair where it is. And then our last posture is just going to be a seated twist, which is just great for kind of getting everything back into alignment. I'm a big fan of a seated twist. So we're sitting on the edge of the chair, sitting up nice and tall, feet flat on the floor, about hip distance apart, and lifting up through the crown of the head. And then I'm going to go to my left first because that's the side towards the camera. So I'm bringing my right hand across to my right knee, bringing my left hand around behind me, and then planting that hand on your chair. Where you put your hand will depend on your chair and your body and what feels good for you, but just finding somewhere that gives you a bit of leverage. And then taking your head with you, so turning your head so that it comes maybe to the side, maybe towards the back of the room. Just finding a place that feels like a good stretch for you. And when you're there, making sure that you're staying upright through the spine. We've created all that nice, lovely length in the spine. So we don't want to lose that now. And then unraveling back to center. And then we're going to take that across to the other side. So this time it will be left hand across to right knee for me. Right hand around behind you, and then planting that hand wherever it lands on the chair. As I say, that will be different for everybody. Turning your head either to the side or towards the back, whatever feels right for your neck. And making sure you keep that length in the spine. Like we did do the twist before, thinking about leading almost with the shoulder rather than leading with the head. And then we'll unravel, come back to center. And then we will just finish up by coming to sitting up nice and tall again. And then just closing your eyes. And what I want you to invite you to do now is, again, as we did at the beginning, just to really notice how you're sitting and how your body feels. Maybe bringing your attention to your sitting bones, that's on your hips, and just checking that your weight is evenly balanced across both hips, maybe rocking a little side to side if you need to, just to find that. With feet firmly planted on the floor. So that's giving you a really stable base there. And then for the upper body, thinking about lifting up from the crown of the head. Shoulders relaxing down, plenty of space around the neck. And then, as at the beginning, just feeling what it feels like to sit up nice and tall. And making a little promise to yourself to try and remember this feeling when you're sitting, or you've been sitting for too long, or you feel you're sitting awkwardly or slumping over, and just coming back to this feeling and taking that moment just to sit up nice and tall again. So I'll just take a couple of nice deep breaths to finish up. And then I'm going to invite you to open your eyes, bring your palms together, and that is where we will leave it today. So thank you very much for sharing your time and energy with me and everybody else, and I hope that you have felt the benefits of it. and hope to see you again soon. Namaste.